Get ready for the biggest streaming showdown of the year. Nielsen just dropped the numbers, and we're breaking down the surprising popularity of Star Wars on Disney+. We're talking about which shows and movies are dominating the screens, and the data reveals some massive shifts in what fans are watching right now.
Tired of dropping your phone or struggling to hold it with one hand? The PopSocket's Pop Grip gives you a secure grip, works as a phone stand, and even lets you swap the top for a fresh new look. Simple, useful, and perfect for everyday phone use. Click the link in the comments to grab yours on Amazon.
Next up, we dive deep into the top 10 streaming titles for May the 4th, 2025, and the data shows a clear winner taking the top spot. We'll explore how Andor dominated the charts and look at the surprising preferences of different age groups, from millennials and Gen X to baby boomers and Gen Alpha. Now, we shift gears completely because new streaming data paints a shockingly grim picture for Disney's Star Wars sequels. We're looking at Nielsen's findings on the sequel trilogy and whether the recent releases are actually resonating with the massive fan base, especially when compared to the success of Andor. And finally, we look beyond the content to the bottom line as we preview Disney's Q1 2026 earnings. We're analyzing the tug of war between streaming margin progress and the parks segment doubt, figuring out what truly drives the Disney stock forward or pulls it down. New Nielsen data reveals surprising viewing trends for Star Wars content on Disney+. In a recent analysis released for Star Wars Day, the data highlights a strong preference for live-action content among fans. 44% of viewing time was dedicated to live-action Star Wars movies, compared to 39% for live-action series and 17% for animated shows, indicating that the 11 live-action films generated a significant portion of the viewing engagement despite the volume of available television series. Andor, the acclaimed drama, topped the streaming charts in 2025 with its 18 episodes as the most streamed title. This dominance persisted even when the analysis window was narrowed to the first quarter of the year, remaining the top-streamed Star Wars show across both millennial and Gen X demographics. The popularity of other titles varied by generation. The first Star Wars series, The Mandalorian, proved most streamed among Gen Alpha viewers, ages 2 to 13, and boomers, ages 62 to 80. In contrast, Gen Z viewers, ages 14 to 29, favored the animated series Star Wars, The Clone Wars. Looking at the top 10 favorites for 2025, the list was heavily weighted toward films. Notably, no titles from the sequel trilogy made the top 10, despite The Force Awakens holding the record for the biggest U.S. domestic box office success of all time. The list featured a mix of original trilogy and prequel trilogy entries, including Star Wars, A New Hope, The Phantom Menace, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Attack of the Clones, and Rogue One. A Star Wars story, suggesting a relatively balanced appeal across these eras. These streaming figures come as Disney prepares for a major release, with the Mandalorian sequel film, The Mandalorian and Grogu, set to premiere on May 22. Nielsen has released a comprehensive streaming ratings breakdown for the top 10 Star Wars shows and movies consumed during the May the 4th, 2025 festivities, revealing key trends in the franchise's viewership. The analysis highlights that while new releases like Star Wars, Maul, Shadow Lord were prominent, the series Andor secured the top spot on the most streamed list. This ranking is attributed to Andor airing new episodes of its second and final season around that time, following a period where the prequel series Rogue One, A New Hope, The Phantom Menace, and The Empire Strikes Back rounded out the top 5. Despite a relatively slow year for the franchise, U.S. audiences demonstrated enduring loyalty, racking up 33 billion minutes watched across all Star Wars content on linear TV and streaming in 2025. Disney+, which hosts nearly all of the series' projects, emerged as the primary destination for fans. In terms of content format, live-action movies accounted for 44.2% of all Star Wars content viewed in 2025. Live-action series led this category, with Andor garnering 7.4 billion minutes of viewing, compared to 38.9% for other live-action series. Animated spin-offs made up 16.8% of the content, while documentaries, such as Empire of Dreams, the story of the Star Wars trilogy, represented only 0.2%. Nielsen also provided demographic insights, showing that millennials and Gen X audiences showed a preference for Andor, whereas baby boomers and Gen Alpha tuned into The Mandalorian. IGN is continuing the coverage of Star Wars Day 2026 with rankings for movies and video games. New streaming data released by Nielsen paints a starkly negative picture for Disney's recent Star Wars sequel trilogy, suggesting a widespread lack of viewership. The data, tracked through Disney+, the platform holding the franchise rights, indicates that the three sequel movies, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, failed to register significantly among fans who streamed top Star Wars movies on May 4th. While the prequel movies fared better, the absence of the sequels from the top 10 streamed titles is a jarring metric. In contrast, the series Andor emerged as a significant positive, ranking number 1 among streamed titles, benefiting from universal acclaim across generations of fans, including millennials and Gen X. This success highlights a crucial point for Disney. The resonance of Andor suggests a potential path forward, possibly involving a tonal shift back to the core themes of the original saga, such as the rebellion versus the Empire. The consensus among critics and fans remains that the sequel saga was a critical and commercial failure. Industry predictions for upcoming theatrical releases, including The Mandalorian and Grogu, suggest cautious optimism as Disney seeks to break from a decade of perceived stagnation within the franchise. Furthermore, industry commentary has pointed to disappointing box office forecasts, with some predictions for new Star Wars films being significantly lower than previous successes. This new data serves as a major wake-up call for Disney regarding the future direction of Star Wars, emphasizing the need to understand what drove the success of shows like Andor and how to revitalize the franchise for future releases. Disney is gearing up for a critical earnings preview as the company prepares to release its fiscal Q2 2026 results on Wednesday, May 6. The market is keenly focused on a central dichotomy: whether the company's streaming margin progress can overcome potential slowdowns in its parks segment. Wall Street is seeking clear evidence of top-line growth alongside proof that the profitability of its streaming operations is sustainable. The consensus estimates for the quarter project revenue at $25.03 billion, marking a modest year-over-year increase of about 6%, with adjusted earnings per share, EPS, pegged at $1.49, slightly lower than the previous year. Despite this, Disney's stock has demonstrated resilience, beating consensus estimates in the last 4 quarters, with an average surprise exceeding 11%. Analysts emphasize that segment mix is more important than headline numbers. Experiences drives the cash flow narrative, entertainment focuses on streaming performance, and sports is tied to rights costs. A strong performance in experiences, coupled with a revenue beat, is viewed favorably, whereas a revenue beat accompanied by softness in experiences presents a different outlook. The direct-to-consumer business achieved profitability in fiscal 2024, shifting investor focus to durability. Management has set a target of a 10% operating margin for the combined Disney Plus and Hulu business across the full fiscal year 2026. The Disney Plus margin is a key metric, as it indicates the effectiveness of price increases, ad-tier scaling, and password sharing crackdowns. Drivers supporting this margin include successful bundle attachment with Hulu and ESPN+, the incremental subscriber acquisition from a lower-priced ad tier, and higher CPMs from sports adjacency. On the parks front, the revenue line presents a potential vulnerability. Management anticipates modest segment operating income growth for the quarter, with high single-digit growth expected for the full fiscal year, weighted toward the back half. Known drags impacting Q2 include softness in international visitation, pre-launch costs for the Disney Adventure cruise ship, and pre-opening costs for World of Frozen at Disneyland Paris. Looking forward, indicators are mixed. Disney has noted pacing improvements for Walt Disney World room bookings, suggesting resilience in the second half. Conversely, the slowdown case involves softening domestic guest spending and a worsening international mix, suggesting cyclical pressure on the experiences segment. Investors are advised to closely monitor per capita spending and attendance commentary during the call to gauge the true state of consumer spending. Content remains the core engine, powering both streaming growth and park attendance through new releases from Marvel, Star Wars, and Pixar. The fiscal 2026 slate is positioned as a recovery year, and investors seek confirmation that release timing and reception are on track. Valuation remains debated, with bulls focusing on the streaming margin trajectory and the park's back half ramp, while bears cite sports rights cost inflation, content execution risks, and macroeconomic sensitivity. Ultimately, the Q2 print will serve as a definitive test of Disney's strategy, balancing the streaming margin glide path against the volatility of the park segment.